The infamous Roman emperor, Caligula, is said to have been so deranged that he put people to death for forgetting his birthday. However, stories like this may have been more fiction than reality. Gaius Caesar Germanicus, better known as Caligula, was 24 years old when he became the third Roman emperor in the year 37. The young man ruled for only 4 years before he was brutally killed along with his wife and daughter by a group of guards and tossed into a shallow grave. Aside from the sensationalist matters, the third Roman emperor reinstated treason trials and carried out public executions. Irrespective of whether Caligula actually organized orgies or made parents watch their children being killed, the emperor was a dangerous man to be around. Indeed, with Caligula, friendship and loyalty would not save you if he turned against you in the final stages whenever he wished. Gaius Caesar Germanicus was born in Antium, Italy, on August 13, 12 AD. He was the third of 6 living children, born to his father Germanicus and mother Agrippina the Elder. The boy was born into undreamt of nobility, and his family was the most highly regarded in all of Rome, and his great-great-grandfather was none other than Julius Caesar. Both Augustus, Gaius's great-grandfather, and his father Germanicus were broadly known and respected in their time. But Caligula's legacy was to be unfortunately sadistic. Augustus's reign, the first emperor, was coming to an end when Caligula was born. A new Roman rule came with Augustus, under a single leader who also led Rome's ruling elites into chaos. Tiberius, Augustus's stepson, harbored little aspirations to become emperor. As such, the heir to the throne would lie with Augustus's teenage grandchildren, who would die before Augustus himself. An unwilling Tiberius was adopted as both son and heir, forced to take his nephew Germanicus to continue the lineage, and assume the crown after the death of his stepfather Augustus. However, when Augustus died on August 19th of AD 14, Tiberius rose to power and sent Germanicus to the eastern provinces. Germanicus brought Gaius Caesar Germanicus, who was only 3 years old, along with him in his military campaigns. Gaius was a loyal little soldier. It was during this time that his nickname Caligula was born because of the little boots he wore. However, in 19, Germanicus fell ill and died. Suetonius, one of Caligula's biographers, believed that Germanicus was poisoned on the orders of Tiberius, afraid that he was a political rival. Agrippina spread this narrative, a move that later cost him her life. Possibly desperate to tamp down the narrative, Tiberius banished Agrippina to prison on some remote island. She died of starvation, and after that, the emperor jailed his 2 eldest sons. One committed suicide, and the other died of starvation, just like his mother. Nevertheless, Caligula and his sisters were exempted from reprisals, as they did not seem to be immediate threats. He was sent to live with his great-grandmother Livia, who would soon die, leaving Caligula under the care of his grandmother, Antonia. It is believed that the famous incest story of the soon-to-be emperor began at this time. Caligula was now a teenager, and is rumored to have engaged in sexual relations with his sister Drusilla, while the two were living with their grandmother. As to whether Caligula actually engaged in incest, however, is something iffy. When Caligula reached adulthood, between the ages of 18 and 19, Tiberius sensed the need to earn the young man's loyalty. Tiberius summoned Caligula to the island of Capri, where, per conflicting reports, he was reportedly treated as a prince or prisoner by the emperor. Becoming Emperor Caligula. Arguably, Gaius Caesar Germanicus may have been both treated as a prince and forced to remain on the island as a captive of Tiberius. This jarring inconsistency and bewildering treatment may have left Caligula traumatized, according to several historians. The belief is that, during this turbulent period in Caligula's life, he began to indulge in the gruesome. Even in those days, Caligula failed to control his innate brutality, Suetonius wrote. He loved to watch tortures and executions, and, masked in a wig and cloak, he devoted himself every night to the pleasure of feasting and outrageous lifestyle. This man's unchained personality became so apparent that even Tiberius took note. "I'm looking at a viper for the Roman people," he said. Tiberius fell ill in March 37 AD and died just a month later. Although the public strongly felt that Caligula may have had some part in his death, they were very pleased. Caligula, son of Germanicus, a military man beloved by the Romans, was believed to probably display the same honorable traits and behavior as his father. The Roman Senate strongly agreed with this fact, yet Caligula, then 24 years old, had no experience in war, diplomacy, or government. Caligula's reign was initially warmly welcomed. He freed all those whom his predecessor had wrongly imprisoned, and removed a universally unpopular tax. He ushered in an age of rife, with public events that ranged from chariot races and boxing matches to plays and gladiator brawls. After 6 or 7 months as emperor, however, everything changed. Caligula became so ill that he fluctuated between life and death for a whole month. He recovered in October 37 AD, but it appeared that whatever ailment had afflicted him had rendered him virtually unrecognizable. Caligula became even more paranoid. He upped his taxes to pay for his lavish lifestyle. He regressed to his behaviors in Capri. The infamous hedonistic ruler who went down in history was born. Caligula's disease has been much debated. Some historians believe he was poisoned, while others strongly contest this. Other experts believe that he may have suffered a breakdown or an epileptic fit. Certainly, Caligula's malice brought about an indisputable change in his character. Following his illness, everything and everyone irked him. He would eventually, when the crowds at the chariot races supported teams other than his favorite, talked about killing them all. In effect, Caligula murdered anyone who displeased him, regardless of how close they were to him. He executed his cousin and adopted son Tiberius Gemellus. Caligula's grandmother was infuriated by the deed and, of course, died shortly after voicing this. Like with most of these sudden deaths that encircled Caligula's life, a debate continues as to whether the woman committed suicide or actually was poisoned by the emperor. The tyrannical ruler sure had a knack for intimidating people. He would remind them, "Remember that I have the right to do anything to anyone." This is exactly what he did. He would banish anyone seemingly loyal to the previous emperor, including his own wife. He would scold landowners just as he could take their property. The members of the Roman Senate, however, were the ones who suffered the most at his hands. Caligula reportedly executed 2 consultants for forgetting his birthday. The senators found it virtually impossible to decipher how Caligula could react to any given issue. He had double standards. He personally wrote detailed indictments for cases in the Roman Senate, considering himself the best legal mind of his time, only to execute many individuals without solid evidence. When he complained about Senate decisions, he never overturned those, although he had the power to do so. Caligula is also said to have literally declared himself a living god. Not only did he dress up as gods and demigods like Hercules, Mercury, Venus, and Apollo, but he also commanded the construction of a bridge connecting his palace to the Temple of Jupiter. At one time, he proclaimed to the Senate that he would move to Egypt because there he would be worshipped as a living god. Of course, acting so crazy was not taken well by hardly anyone. Caligula reportedly forced the parents of those he executed to watch their children die, ordered the heads of several statues to be removed and replaced with his own, and seemed to have more affection for his horse, Incitatus, than for his wife. Caligula prized the steed so much that he gave it its own home, with an ivory manger and a marble stall. Legend has it that the emperor even intended to make Incitatus a consul. The narcissism didn't stop there. Caligula would often refer to himself as a god during political meetings. He was even noted as such in public documents that registered his presence or appearance. He would dissolve pearls in vinegar to feed himself, give his horse a jewel-encrusted collar, and declare war on the ocean. The legends are infinite. However, the extent to which Caligula's penchant for extremism and excess went is still heavily debated. After all, how crazy was this demented emperor? Not every modern author asserts that Caligula was insane. Instead, the emperor's reputation as mad could have been fabricated by political rivals. Some historians said that Caligula was merely insane, but do not pinpoint any specific condition. One theory suggests epilepsy as the primary cause of his headaches. He may have been deathly afraid of imminent convulsions. Caligula was notorious for talking to the moon, which was the celestial body believed to be related to seizures during his time. Others have stressed Caligula's impulsiveness and irritability, as well as his reported tendency to stare off into the distance. They believed he suffered from hyperthyroidism, which also commonly leads to headaches. As a matter of fact, Caligula was tormented by headaches at some point during his reign. Plus, Caligula may have been insane for what was propelled by a mental disorder. His documented symptoms would suggest that he actually suffered from bipolar disorder. He was originally diagnosed with epilepsy as a child, but his bipolar symptoms eluded diagnosis because the condition was unknown to the doctors of his day. Caligula allegedly developed paranoia as a part of the bipolar disorder, but by being raised in the environment that Caligula experienced, filled with murder, executions, and suicides, anyone could have become paranoid. He only survived to become emperor by chance, and his only ambition up to that point was probably to simply survive. One further thing to remember is that Caligula's real name was Gaius. The Roman people knew him as the Emperor Gaius. Subsequent detractors commonly used Caligula as a way to ridicule him. Caligula also did not make his horse a senator, but named his favorite chariot racehorse as a religious order member, as a joke, surely. Caligula did not host orgies, but this was partially because Tiberius, who was actually a known pedophile, forced him to have sex with prostitutes as a teenager. One of the first things Caligula did when he became emperor was to outlaw all those male prostitutes from Rome. And finally, he didn't have sex with all his sisters. He may have fooled around with his favorite sister, Drusilla, as a teenager, but even that is debatable. Aside from all this mythology revolving around Caligula, he was far from a righteous ruler. Countless people were killed or ruined just as a result of his whims or paranoia. Apart from the first few months of his reign and some innovative public infrastructure ventures, he was largely a disaster as an administrator and leader. Be it poison, trauma, mental illness, overblown rumors, or coming of age in a toxic environment, Caligula's behavior made him unpopular. On January 24, 41 AD, the emperor was murdered by a group of guards after the Palatine Games celebrations. The first person to stab Caligula is said to have been Sharia. Regardless of whether or not this was the case, the mad emperor was stabbed more than 30 times and died on the spot. He was then thrown into a shallow grave before his wife and daughter were dealt the same fate. But Caligula's death was hardly enough for those who were wary of his reign. The Senate was anxious to obliterate the man's history. They commanded the destruction of his statues and upheld a new republic under the reign of Caligula's uncle, Claudius, who was found cowering behind a set of curtains while Caligula and his immediate family were being executed. Curiously, the people of ancient Rome were genuinely enraged when Caligula was assassinated. Vengeance against the traitors who killed him was needed, something that Caligula's successor, his uncle Claudius, wholeheartedly provided.